Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Transparency. What's your story? I am Mr. Jean. So happy to have you guys here. As you guys know, the goal here every single time we're on the air is to inspire and bring out the best of people. So I believe everybody has a story. Everybody has a story that we all can connect with. Our journey in life is finding out those tidbits. And today is no different. Today, I have a person here that has an incredible story, a three-time college graduate, an ex-computer analyst, high school teacher, university film instructor, screenwriter, as well as a public speaker on one specific topic, surviving manic depression. Are you guys aware that 5 out of 100 people have dealt with manic depression? And right now, I'm about to get that guest on. We're just going to jump right on into it. Stay tuned. Watch, see what we got. Transparency. What's your story, Mr. John? This podcast takes you the trials and triumphs of those of everyday life. I am your host, Mr. John. I'm a motivational speaker. I am a songwriter, singer, and I'm happy you chose to stop by. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Transparency. This is what we've been waiting for here today. I have got Ioannis Skiotes. This person is a three-time college graduate, an ex-computer analyst, a high school teacher, a university film instructor, screenwriter, and has mastered this particular topic, surviving manic depression. And of course, let me say he is not a licensed mental health person, but that does not take away from what he has to talk about, because his story is incredible. We only have incredible people on this show, and like we like to say, everybody has a story. You just have to ask the right questions to get something out of it. But more importantly, I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, by the time we get done with this conversation, you will be completely surprised of what the hell and the hell water he has been through, but the victory that he's gotten on the other side. So, Ioannis, thank you for being a part of our podcast.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's quite an introduction. Hope I can live up to it.
I definitely try. Because, we're going to get into the topics today. As reading through your information, 20 months in a state mental institution. They gave you the wrong meds. Your journey back from all that, and then a very interesting conversation you had with Jack Nicholson many years ago. We're going to get into that. Those are just some of the notes. But let's get into this, because in the beginning of everybody has the beginning of their story. Where were you born?
I was born in Joliet, Illinois. It's a town 35 miles south of Chicago, most famously known for its prison, the old Joliet prison, which is in a lot of movies, James Cagney movies, and then the more modern movie about the Blues Brothers. That was also filmed in old Joliet prison. So It was a famous prison. A lot of heinous criminals went there. A lot from my neighborhood went there. Rapists, murderers, you name it, we had it. And it was not a place you want to go to. It was right downtown, right off Collins Street. So, there's signs all over the city. Don't pick up any hitchhikers. Don't pick up any hitchhikers. And we had laughed as kids because we know what it meant. But if you're a stranger in there, you probably wonder, well, what the heck's going on? And there you see that big limestone prison right downtown.
Gotcha. Wow. Well, it's still an interesting start from that to you going through this topic. So, so you were born there, and what started? I really want you to be able to tell your story. What started the journey of you realizing about manic depression?
Well, when I was in it, a lot of times you don't know you're in the hellhole until you're in it. And for me, my parents died. My mother right out of high school. My dad 4 years, one day later, both right before Christmas. And so I went to Arizona, and then graduated. And then when I moved to Florida, that's where I contracted the illness. And I remember it vividly because it felt like, I was hopeless, and I lost a job, and I felt just totally out of it. I already graduated from college. I lost my first job out of college, and I felt like there's no reason to live. And there's basically just me and two older brothers, and we're very far apart geographically. And I remember going on a bridge near Tallahassee, Florida, because I was lost. I had nowhere to go. And I felt like jumping off this bridge, but I didn't. And then I remember the mind went blank. It's like Muhammad Ali wrote about it in his book, The Greatest. When you get hit with a punch, you hear like tuning forks. And I remember that. It's like my mind just went blank, and I heard like nothing. There was just this emptiness. And I started going downhill from there. And I remember that vividly because I was on that bridge in Tallahassee, Florida. And that's where I started going downhill.
So it happened more in college, like after college, when you started having feelings.
After college. And I was about, let me see, I was 25 years old. So it was after college, after my first professional job, because all the other ones that were labor-intensive jobs before that. And then that's where I started going downhill. And man, I remember I felt it. You just felt like, your mind was going south.
Just going south, like there was nothing.
You couldn't think. You couldn't. I couldn't make decisions, and I kept getting worse. And I started hearing voices, and I had to see a private doctor. I had no insurance. That only lasted for a week, and my brother had to send me to a state hospital because I literally could not make decisions. I was hearing voices. When you hear voices, you're definitely mentally ill. And that's a big sign. I mean, by that time, you need some kind of treatment. And unfortunately, I had no health insurance. That's why I'm a big advocate of national health insurance. And I can tell you about that as well.
We will get into that. We're going to get into that.
Yeah, because that's horrible when you have none, believe me. And that's how I wound up into a state institution. And then let's face it, you're not going to get the best of doctors working in a state place.
Let's
especially
talk about
that place.
Let's talk about it. I guess was that you started. So your brother, as you were saying, you were hearing voices. You couldn't make decisions. You felt stuck, and your brother sent you to a state mental hospital. Was that Memento?
Yes. Mantino, yeah, in Kankakee, Illinois. Yeah, it since has been closed down for maltreatment. Okay. And my mother was in the same place around the same age. Now they gave her shock treatments. Now some say mental illness is genetic. I think they have a point, maybe, because my mother had it around the same age as me. She already had her first child, and she was married. And then she's in the same place as me. They gave her shock treatments. And I remember her telling me the horror stories of shock treatments. They tried to give them to me, but no way. I remember her stories, and no way is I going to sign those papers. And it was a scary place. I mean, you had convicts in there that would rather be back in prison. We're talking prisons like Menard, St. Charles, Marion, where Gotti went. These are heinous institutions. They'd rather be in there than this mental institution.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, and they were white guys and African American guys saying the same thing. Man, I'd rather be back in prison. And you got to remember, they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So you're taking your drugs 4 times a day.
Wait. Drugs 4 times a day?
4 times.
Well,
like
what type of drugs? And what type of drugs were they?
Well, they just guess. They figure, well, maybe this will cure your mental illness, and maybe it won't. We'll switch to another drug. And I'll tell you, one time I refused, and security guards, they're a bunch of rednecks. They grabbed me, they strapped me down, they slugged me. I still got a scar over here. for where they busted my eye open. Okay, and then they shot it in you. And and let me tell you, about 20 minutes later, you're going to go nuts because the side effects are not multiplicative; they're exponential.
What type of
So
side effect?
usually you're on two drugs, and each one has at least 10 to 25 side effects. Let's be gracious and just say they only have 10 each. It's not 10 times 10. Your side effects are 10 to the 10th power. A 10 with 9 zeros behind it, as in 10 billion. It's not a telephone number. It's not a sports player's new contract. It's the side effects you're going to feel every time in about 20 minutes. They call it the nut house for a reason.
Wow.
And you're going to go nuts. I mean, you know, and you're out of it. Now, they fed me every wrong drug in the world. Thorazine, Haldol, Mellaril, which was banned in 2005 because it's caused severe cardiac arrhythmias. I was taking it 4 times a day. And in 2017, I found out I had a cardiac arrhythmia. Recently, I got an ablation, hopefully to keep that arrhythmia gone, but it's probably caused in 81 when I was taking the Mellaril. And those, now there's a guy in there. I'll show you how wicked the mind is. There was a patient in there for 10 years. His name was Denny. He was taking Thorazine and Haldol together. And I used to be a computer programmer before before I went in there. I was also a computer programmer later on. And he still remembered the operating commands to run the computer, the mainframe computer. Wow. And he was in there 10 years. And they were feeding him Thorazine and Haldol. Now, Thorazine, if you remember those movies back in the 50s where the mob had fighters like Sonny Liston and everybody else, they would drug the fighters. They'd put Thorazine in their water bottle, have them take some water, you know, in the dressing room. By the time they got to the ring, that Thorazine kicked in, they were a zombie. And then the opponent rushed in there and bam, knock them right out. Because you're frozen. When you take Thorazine, buddy, you're frozen. You ain't going nowhere. And it's really a vicious drug. And, you know, that's why Muhammad Ali, before his Jerry Quarry fight, he thought everybody was too relaxed. And he looked around, he said, wait a minute, something ain't right. He ordered those water bottles to be untaped, drained out, reflushed, water put back in. He thought, man, this ain't right. And I could relate to that because that's how, and Ali knew that's how fighters got knocked out in the 50s. They drugged the water.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, when Ali wrote about that, man, I lived that. But this guy still remembered the operating commands 10 years later, and he was on Thorazine and Haldol. That's what I'm saying. The mind's a powerful thing. The power of the mind is unbelievable.
So with you taking these meds, was there, and as you said, it was, let's see how you feel today. Let's see what the results are going to be. What was, I know you said you were hearing voices at the time. Did the voices stop? Did they get louder? Did they?
Well, yeah, they kind of stopped, but other things were happening. My brother, God bless him, he passed away a couple of years ago. He actually saved my life by putting me in there. But anyway, he sent an article. He brought an article with him one day. It was in the early 1920s, my 1910s. My dad had a popcorn wagon and it caught on fire. And they had a little write-up on it in the local newspaper. It was a short paragraph, about 3 sentences. He handed it to me. I could not read it. Here I was, a 2-time college graduate, salutatorian in high school, and I couldn't read 3 sentences.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it does to your mind. And I was just gone. Okay.
So that was 12 months.
Yeah, I
In
was in
total,
there 12 months.
yeah,
Yep.
12 months,
And then
one
told
full year.
one full year, probably a little bit over, but we'll just round it off, say a year.
So what then? How are you able to get out of? I mean, yeah, how are you able then to get out of the hospital? I mean, what did you have
Well,
to show them that for you to be able to get out?
right. Surprise, surprise, like Gomer Pyle said, right? Somehow they lessened the drugs and miraculously I got better. And when
Huh?
I did, I asked my brother to get me Father John Artemis's business card that I had in my wallet since 1975. And I still got it to this day. And it had a caption on it, said, "Remember, no human condition is ever permanent. Therefore, you will not be too overjoyed in times of good fortune, nor too sorrowful in times of misfortune." And that became one of the keys of my 6-point method. So there, I felt a little bit better. They took me to the halfway house, which is still a state place. Okay. So I went in there and I was in there for around 8 or 9 months. And
Were you still having to take medication while you were there?
oh yeah, that's where they gave me the Mellaril, which causes heart arrhythmias. And it's for illnesses that don't even exist. I found out from a doctor later. He was saying they were giving you medications for illnesses that don't exist by modern medical standards. But you got to remember, these are state places. What doctor to make a lot of money is going to go work in a state place where you're getting relatively minimal pay?
Gotcha.
And if you're not analyzed right, how can you be diagnosed right and cured right? You can't. So it's Russian roulette with your mind, and then that's what you're basically going through. And
So so it's hell in a high basket, basically. It's some days are heaven, some days is or some moments are heaven and other moments are hell.
yeah, that's and more hell than heaven. And by a long shot, if you put odds on it, 10 to 1, you got good odds. But I'll show you how heinous those drugs are. A friend of mine from high school, he came and visited me. In high school, he wore full-length fur coats. He was a drug dealer, sold everything from heroin to weed, took everything from heroin to weed. I slipped him one of the pills I was taking. He took it, came back. He said, "What in the hell are they giving you?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Man, that knocked me out for a day." I said, "Oh, really? You ought to take the other medication I'm taking." That knocked your ass out. I gave you the lesser one. Try the other one I'm taking. And this guy was fully healthy. And he knew drugs, everything from heroin to weed. He
Right.
took them all. He sold them all. He took them all. And that's what it did to him. And he said, "Man, you got to get out of here." I said, "Tell me about it." But anyway, it was what it was. And I remember I finally got better. And I remember a girl, really nice girl. I mean, John Lennon was murdered when I was in there, December 8th, 1980. And this girl really wept. But she told me something very poignant when I was ready to leave. She said, "Remember, you are never cured. So always eat well and get your rest." That became another point of my 6-point plan.
Okay.
So
And
the next day, I had to drive 1,800 miles in Arizona. I was institutionalized.
wait. So you went from Chicago, and then they sent you to Arizona?
No, I went to Arizona to try to get my life back together because I had a degree from there before. I wanted to get another one in computers to get a job. So, I couldn't stay at my brother's because they told me you got to get him going. And when you're institutionalized, especially being on these meds, you're drained. The first 100 miles, I stopped in Bloomington, Illinois, and man, I was scared. I said, "Oh my God, I got 1,700 more miles to go." And all I had was a car and a map and me. And whatever money I had, I had. And I put the money all over me. It's an old trick my dad taught me till I can get to a bank. In case you get mugged, make sure your money isn't in one spot. I had it in my underwear and my socks, underneath my socks and my shoes, all over.
How
Okay,
much money
so
do you have? How much
I
money do
had
you have?
my life savings of about $5,000.
Wow.
So
Okay.
Yeah. So, because I had some money from before, my brother was able to hide it. And so I got to Arizona and I slept in a parking lot of a Motel 6 because I didn't want to spend the money in a hotel. So I slept in my car, and the next morning I got a hotel. And and then I went to see a mental health doctor there in Tempe, Arizona, who got my records from Chicago Heights, the halfway house on Mantino, the state institution, mental ward. And he was in the business over 30 years. And he looked at me real strange. And he said, "How did you do it?" I said, "What? Survive." He said, "I never read or encountered anything like this. They gave you every wrong drug imaginable. They treated you for psychotic depression, which doesn't exist, when you had manic depression. That with lithium carbonate, you probably could have been cured in 6 weeks. But cured to me is a foreign word because you're never really cured of this. You learn how to live with it." And I told him I didn't survive it. God allowed me through it by what he put in place for me. And I read on Father John's card, no human condition is ever permanent. So that's shocked him when he read through those records on what happened in there. Because most of those people don't survive, and I was very, very fortunate. Most of those people are coming back like in 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 weeks. They're coming back because they're not able to deal with it.
I can only imagine. I mean, I commend you for the fact that you left Chicago and knew that you had to get back to what was important, which was education. At the same time, you needed help, so you sought out help. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the help basically came from the 6 points I went through, and because you got to remember, when I was in the halfway house, they let me go to I walked a straight line to this community college.
Mm-hmm.
And when those people were talking normal English, it seemed to me like they're on an Autobahn. I couldn't understand the English they were speaking. It was too fast. Because when your mind is gone like that, when your mind is that receded, you can't understand the words that are coming at you. It's like Muhammad Ali throwing a bunch of punches at you. You just can't see him coming. And I couldn't understand what they were saying. I was scared out of my mind. I said, "Holy cow, they're just speaking English and I can't understand it." So
Wow.
over time, that got better because I kept walking there every day. It was a straight line, so I couldn't get lost. Because, when you're institutionalized and on drugs like that, those drugs are also part of your institutionalization.
Right.
So, and to walk out of there and then 24 hours later hop in a car and drive 1,800 miles, you got to have faith or something going for you.
Well, you said it was a straight line, which is interesting because you still had to have trust in yourself to say, I'm going to go somewhere that I do remember, but I'm still going to take care of myself while I'm there. Because I hear so many stories where people go there, new life, new me, and forget about their past, but never work on their future because of their past. You kept working on it.
Well, fear is a great motivator. Like Cus D'Amato taught Mike Tyson, fear is like fire. If you know how to use it, it could warm your house. If you don't, it'll burn your house down. So believe me, when you get out of there, you're scared. You're saying, "Oh my God," you're mentally ill forever. It's not like, "I'm over the cold. Okay, fine, everything's normal." No, wrong answer. Manic depression is an illness you live with your whole life. The key is learning how to live with it, not die from it, like Robin Williams, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who had the best money doctors could buy. They couldn't find a way to live with it, so they committed suicide. All right. So I learned that this illness will attack you, just like an alcoholic. An alcoholic is never cured of alcoholism. He learns to live with it instead of dying from it. Same thing with manic depression. People say, "Oh, I'm okay." No, you're not.
Well,
You
let's
have to
talk about
learn how to live with it.
let's
Yeah,
talk
you
about
have
that
to learn how to live with it.
living with manic depression. because, I mean, you had to, you know, you've had to work out the highs and the lows, but more importantly, your awareness of what to do. And I definitely want to get into it, but the process, what are some of the things that you've seen of having to learn to living with manic depression? You know, like you said, having that maintaining total awareness. From there, like, uh, what are those steps that you've seen? Because I want to get into the six points, and then of course we got to talk about Jack Nicholson, because I know some folks like, what the hell happened with that. But just right now, you know, the total awareness of living with manic depression. Can you tell me about?
It's a strange illness because it's not like a cold where you feel like you nasally or your throat, something like that. You feel a cold coming on, take a bunch of vitamin C, try to nip it in the bud. Manic depression is not like that. You can be feeling great, and this happened to me just the other day. You're feeling great. Oh man, I'm on top of the world, and bam, you just got whacked by a Mike Tyson right hand. And all of a sudden you feel like quitting. You feel like you're angry or you're depressed, you're bummed out. You just get whacked. Okay, you just get whacked. It's a strange illness where it just hits you like that out of nowhere. And that's what you got to be prepared for. And that's what that one of those 6 points, the pisamu satana, away from me, Satan. Okay, that's where that comes in handy. I just helped a young man out. He's in England, and we chatted, and he's in a kind of like a halfway house, and he's also suffering from manic depression. So we got along, and I told him one of those points. He said, "Oh, Yanni, that's good." I said, "Well, I hope it helps you," and that comes out of the Bible, okay? Because when Christ is going to go through with the crucifixion, Saint Peter told him not to go through with it. And he told Peter, Pisamu Satana, which translates as away from me, Satan. Not that Peter was Satan, but his words were satanic, because without the crucifixion, there's no resurrection. Without the resurrection, there's no Zoe, no eternal life, no hope for us for eternal life. So we had to go through with it. That's why he told Peter what he told him. But for me, that statement, Pisamu Satana, away from me, Satan, is when I get attacked, when I get blindsided, I have a weapon to fight back with. And see, that's what you got to do. I mean, by being awareness and being ready. Just like if somebody jumps you, you have to be aware of where you're at, your circumstances, your surroundings, and what you're going to do if that happens to you. So that's what is always my ace in the hole in the bag, is that Pisamu Satana. I just put up my hands, make the sign of the cross. Away from me, Satan, because you're getting attacked. If you don't, if you just let it get into your mind, it's going to drag you down. And you're going to start feeling depressed. You're going to start feeling all these other symptoms of manic depression. And then you're going to not want to eat. And you're not going to be able to rest. Here we go again. You're sliding, man. You're sliding.
Let's get into that then. Let's get into it, because I know that, as you said, this was one of your points. What are your 6 points of help, or shall I say, your 6 points, your 6-point method? Break them down for everybody.
Okay, the first and foremost, and there's a the Bears I think he's the president, whatever. He's really a cool guy. I had this written down, but he said it about how he lives his life. I start each day being prayerful, grateful, and hopeful. That's the first point. Every day. It's the first thing I do when I wake up. I'm prayerful, grateful, and hopeful. Kevin Warren, that's the Bears president guy. He said that. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. And so what that does, it gives you hope. So right off the bat, when I hit the floor and God allows me to wake up, right off the bat, that's the first point. Because with hope, you invite her sisters, Faith and Agape. to pick up their mother, Sophia, which means wisdom. So you have hope, faith, and agape. It's our own internal Holy Trinity. So that's the first point.
Okay.
Okay. Second point, I recite my daily prayer rules that were set up for me by a father confessor in Denver, and I added to them through the years. So right away, you're wanting to build your internal strength. You got the prayerful, grateful, hopeful. You got your prayer rules. And then Father John's card. Remember, no human condition is ever permanent. Therefore, we not be too overjoyed in times of good fortune, nor too sorrowful in times of misfortune. So in case you slide, you know you can come back from it.
Okay. Well, I want to stop you right there really quick because
go ahead.
you said your second point was your daily prayer rules.
Yeah.
What are those prayer rules? Because I know
there's a litany of prayers I go through, and in there is different prayers that I recite. Okay, and one of them's the Lord's Prayer. Another one is the Pistevo, or the Creed, and then there's other prayers that I pray for others, and I pray for things that I would like to be able to do, and give all thanks to God, because without Him, nothing happens. So it's a whole litany. It takes me about 5-6 minutes, whatever, to get through them, and I usually do them when I'm getting ready to go to work, stuff like that, so I can recite them, because you want to build that strength from faith, from hope.
Strength and faith. I love it. As you said,
Because
your first method is prayerful, grateful, hopeful, wisdom.
Yep. Yeah, that brings, those three things will give you hope.
Right.
Now, that movie Shawshank Redemption, hope is a 4-letter word that convicts don't like using, because there ain't no hope in that. But in that movie, they use it 3 times, once in each of the 3 acts. Okay. But the thing with hope, you bring her sisters, Faith and Agape, with you. That was a true story in the Bible, where these 3 girls, Hope, Faith, and Agape, okay, all they had to do to quit the torturing from the Roman centurions is say, I don't believe in Christ. That's all I had to do. These girls were not even teenagers. They refused, and they were beheaded. And their mother, Sophia, which means wisdom, prayed for 3 years for God to take her. And at 3 years, He did. So if you have those 3 with you, you will gain wisdom. Hope, faith, and agape equals wisdom. So now you have something, you have your Holy Trinity, of your internal Holy Trinity, from the spirit to the mind to the body. Now God has blessed you with a given Holy Trinity. You're blessed with that. You have that. You have the hope, the faith, the agape. You have wisdom. Now you have tools to fight this with. And you reinforce those tools with those daily prayer rules. And Father John's saying on that card. Okay, so now you've built this up right off jump, right as you get out of bed in the morning. That's the first thing you do, is build that up, because you're going to get attacked sooner or later.
So the first method, the day. So you start your day with prayerful, grateful, hopeful, wisdom. Given the Holy Trinity.
Comes from that. Yeah, wisdom comes from the hope, faith, and agape that gives you wisdom.
And then you do your prayer, your daily prayer rules. Your daily prayer rules. And then what do you do for your third? What's third?
That third one is the saying from Father John's card. I read that all the time. I still got the card. Back then, or I wasn't, before I got ill, I wasn't that serious. I put a girl's phone number on the back of it. She was really a beautiful woman I met in junior college. Really nice lady. But anyway, that card, remember, no human condition is ever permanent. Therefore, you'll not be too overjoyed in times of good fortune, nor too sorrowful in times of misfortune. That, again, is like a shield. You're going to get attacked. But remember, it's not permanent. If I went through nearly 2 years of hell, I can go through hell today.
It's not permanent.
Right.
That's
No
the key point.
human condition is ever permanent. Therefore, you don't get too high, you don't get too low. Because you got to remember, manic depression is extreme highs, extreme lows. That's why I never buy anything over $100 on the spot. I need 24
Really?
hours to think about it.
Nothing over $100.
Correct. Because remember when Mike Tyson got out of prison and went nuts and
Yeah.
spent all that money?
Yeah.
He's manic. Mike Tyson, God bless him, love him. He's a classic manic depressant. And so as soon as he got out, he went nuts and spent all that money. And I did the same thing, but I didn't know I was manic depressant. I just went out, blew a bunch of money in credit cards and had filed bankruptcy. So I learned, if it's over $100, I need 24 hours to think about this. I ain't making that mistake again.
Anything over $100, 24 hours, anything.
Anything. I don't care what it is. I ain't doing it. So, that sounds, rather petty. But to me, it's a safeguard against manic depression because you get on a manic high too. It ain't all about being depressed. Manic means extremities. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about it. They just feel you're just down and out. No, sometimes you're higher than a kite. And you'll do stupid things. I did stupid things. I asked this one girl, look, I hope this is okay for your show.
Go for it. Go for it.
I said, what will it take to go to bed with you? I said, let's get to the chase. Well, let's say you're beautiful, you're gorgeous. I love your mixed race, your color. What will it take to go to bed with you? She said, fix my car. I said, all right. So I took it to a mechanic. This was back in the back in the 80s and stuff. And I was already out by then. Okay. It cost $900 back then to fix a car. I should have just bought her another one. Okay. But that's what it took. So see, I would have never thought like that if I had my rules right.
Did you get the girl?
But I didn't. So we went out and had our fun, blah blah blah. But that's what it took, and I was stupid enough to go and do it because I'm manic.
The manic depression. I just want to stay right here for a second because a goal point. I think you said a manic depression doesn't mean that you are always depressed. It could be a manic high that you're chasing. It's like a drug. You're chasing that until you can't, as you said, high credit cards, and then it's like from a high to a damn near low.
Yes, sir. I mean that's how this illness works, and you don't know which one's going to attack you. That's why I got the $100 rule.
Sounds like
I got the $100 rule to protect the highs.
Wow, sounds like almost like 50% of Americans that are in credit card debt could possibly have been either manic depressed, chasing a high, or chasing a low. That's a gold nugget right here for what you're saying. Okay, but before we keep going down on number 3, what's number 4?
What that girl told me in the halfway house when I was ready to get out, she said, "Remember, you are never cured. So always eat well and get your rest." Okay?
Eat well and get your rest. I have a question for you about that one. Eat well and get your rest. There are some scientists and nutritionists that have said, and I don't want to say their names because they're not sponsoring me to say their names at the moment. They have said that mental health could be fixed by nutrition, by eating the right foods and getting rest.
I believe in that a lot because when I was going downhill, okay, I wasn't eating and I wasn't getting any sleep. So I believe there's a point to be made there. Okay, it might not work for everybody, but I know it was part of my 6 points that works for me. And I don't care. Now, some people can't get the right rest. They got a family, they got this, they got that, they got kids. Life gets in the way. But for me, I can do it. And if that means taking off work that day, because I didn't get rest right, I'm taking off work that day. And if that means I need to eat, I'm going to go out and eat, because I'm not going back to that illness. Those days are gone. And that's what that fifth point was I couldn't sleep one night. This female doctor was on a talk show, and she talked about giving your body rest when it requires it, when it begs you for it. Don't fight your body. So if my body tells me to rest, I'm going to go rest. Like, I've come home from work sometimes at 5 o'clock, I'm sleeping because my body tells me to rest. You fight it, you're going to get manic. Then you can't sleep. Here we go. Not sleep, not eating well. Here we go. That's part of that cycle. That was a very thing that hit me. I wasn't eating right, wasn't sleeping right. When I was in my brother's place, then I started hearing voices. So right away, I listen to my body. If it says rest, I rest. If I have to leave work early that day, I'm leaving work early. Because my father told me something very important. He said, remember, you only get one shot at good health, my boy.
Say that again.
You only get one shot at good health.
You only get one shot at good health. That's another. That's another. Yes. You get the round of applause right there. That's the moment right there. Okay, number 6.
Okay, what I said before, the passage from the Bible, Pisamo Satana, which translates as away from me, Satan. So anytime I get attacked, right away, I got something right there, right in the tip of my tongue, ready to fight that demon, ready to fight that evil attack. So you have that with you because you're going to get attacked. Like I said, I was feeling great. All of a sudden, wham, you get whacked, I mean, what do you think Tyson ran his car into a tree for? He got attacked. He had a negative attack. I know it because he's manic depressant. And something hit him, something drove him to do that. And that's why Mike Tyson, for him, he takes marijuana and he takes mushrooms to help level him. And God bless him. And I have a friend that takes the same thing and it works for him. Different people have different ways of dealing. These 6 points work for me. So you have to have your weapons every day when you wake up, because people who think, and this is one of the fallacies of manic depression, who think that they're okay, I'm cured now. I did my carbon lithiate for 6 weeks and I'm out and I'm okay. Wrong answer. I knew a woman, she has a beautiful daughter who was institutionalized for a while, and she went through that, but they had some money, so she got private treatment. But she went through the same thing. She thought she was cured.
What foods do you say are your go-tos? Like, hands down, these are the foods that I must eat.
Well, that's really wild you asked that, because I wasn't eating the right foods for a long time. I mean, I thought I was eating healthy, but I had, the 3 killers are sugars, sodium, and saturated fats. So avoid those 3 as much as you can. And so this nutritionist put me on this program where this thing called chronometer, where on the back of packages, they have those little square things, and you click on that and it breaks the food all down in this chronometer. And then, she gave me limits of how much protein I should have and fats and, sodium and blah, blah, blah. So 3 killers are the saturated fats, sodium, and sugar. I try to avoid those 3 because those 3, your sugars will give you high.
Okay.
Saturated fats and sodium might drive you low, because I had too much sodium. I had the gout. I had too much sugar. I was pre-diabetic. She got me off both of them.
And once you once you got your right foods, you rested, your body basically said, now I can be back to a safe state. I don't want to say normal state, because normal to me, that's everybody's definition, but You came to
Yes.
a medium.
Yeah. You come to a happy medium where, okay, I know how to live with this. I have a game plan. I know how to execute it. I know what tools to use at the right time when things go astray, because they're going to go astray.
Are there
That's
any
what
other
manic
tools?
depression is about.
Are there any other tools that you keep in your storehouse when things start to feel like they're about to go astray?
Not for me. I mean, like Tina Turner, remember that movie, What's Love Got to Do with It? Angela Bassett really nailed it. She did Buddhist chants. For me, I have my prayers, which are similar. So, for me, a lot of it is faith-based and also supplemented by nutrition and rest. So you got your spiritual, your mental, and your physical. You have your Holy Trinity, but you also have your holy and physical Trinity. So to me, those are all intertwined. So where you have a plan how to live with this.
So, top six, your six. Number one, prayer. It starts right off with prayer for both, praying for grateful, hopeful, faith, agape, the Holy Trinity. Second, daily prayer rules. Third, reminding yourself what Father John said on your card, that no human condition is ever permanent. Therefore,
Yeah.
should not be too overjoyed in times of good fortune, nor too sorrow in times of misfortune. I think I said it right.
You did. You nailed
I
it.
did. Okay.
Congratulations.
I tried. And then fourth,
You did better than me. It took me a while to learn it.
fourth, if I'm not mistaken, you said from the young lady from the halfway house, you are never cured, so always eat well and get your rest. You just
Yes.
gave some wonderful tips for those that are listening on definitely foods, getting your rest. And fifth, even going deeper on the rest, as to rest when your body tells you to rest. That means if
Yes.
work, then mix work. And then number six, Pisa Musa Satan, Pia Musa Satana. Get away from me, Satan. Get away from
Right.
me, Satan. Because there's a verse that I use often that says, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." But I'm always having to remind it that God didn't say the weapon would not be formed. He just said it will not prosper.
Good for you. God, that's beautiful. That's great.
So ladies and gentlemen, so those are his 6 points to the method, but also, Giannis was very, very specific with adding this in. He's like, whatever you do, whatever helps to get you through, if it is prayer, if it is meditation, if there are other natural forms that you feel necessary, but there are 6 points to his method, 6 strong points to his method that you can utilize at any time, anytime, at any moment to utilize, so you do not have to feel that, one, you are having to be manic or being a manic high or manic low of depression. I think I got it right, Giannis. I think you let me know. Does that sound correct?
You nailed it. I mean, you learned it quicker than I did.
No. This is, God has blessed me with allowing me to be able to listen to a story, to hear what you have, hear your story, and being able to process it, because that's the unique thing about this particular program. What's your story? We want to hear about your story, but more importantly, I believe
Well,
everybody has a story, and yours is very unique to you. Yet, I believe folks can benefit from this story
I
because
hope so.
you completely tapped in on something which I think a lot of Americans, including myself at times, has not been aware of, that you can be manically depressed lowly, or you can be on that manic depression of high, trying to chase that high because it's that certain feeling, yet when that high runs out, it runs out.
Well, and two, an inspiration to me was them other people in there. They
Mhm.
were a lot worse off than me. Like I told you, I got in there for 10 years, still remembered operating commands to a computer.
Right.
And that's what pissed me off with Jack Nicholson and Caesars.
I'm
Okay.
happy you segued right into that because that was going to be my next question. Let's talk
Okay.
about this thing with Jack Nicholson because, as a reminder, you are a screenwriter. You have a couple of things you've written, things are out. Definitely some things that are possibly going to be out for development. So we can definitely talk about that a little bit later. But let's talk about your story. What happened with you and Crazy Jack Nicholson? I mean, we've seen him play all the crazy roles. He's a great actor. He seems to meld out in his mature age because he's able to go look. He still has front seats at the Lakers, so we were like,
Yeah.
he still must be doing pretty well. But let's hear your story. What happened between you and Jack Nicholson?
Well, two of my favorite fighters were Muhammad Ali, who was a hero to me in and out of the ring, and I got to meet him 3 times, wrote him twice, he wrote me back twice. I love Ali. I grew up on Ali. Okay. And the other one was Roberto Duran.
Okay,
And so I wanted to write his movie script. I eventually did, but someone else beat me to the money. So I went to several Duran's fights, was in his camp for 5 of them. And one of them was when he got knocked out by Tommy Hearns in June of '84, I believe it was. Well, the night, actually, technically the day of that fight, early in the morning, June 15th, Jack Nicholson was at the Barge, which back then was a night spot within Caesars. And my best friend Mark, who always stood by me through this ordeal and to this day, he loved Jack Nicholson. Okay. And me, I'm not really all that much into getting autographs of actors, but this is my best friend's favorite actor. So I wanted to get his autograph. So I grabbed a pen and a napkin there from the bar and I beelined to him. And he had two big bodyguards and they blocked me. And I said, hey, I just want to get an autograph, man. you know? And so Nicholson said, let him by. And so he signed it. And then he tapped me on the face and very derisively said, get a shave, real arrogant, you know. And so, I went back to Duran's friends at the bars because they got me in with Roberto for the Hagler fight. And I looked at that and I said, oh, hell no. No. And he's standing there real arrogant with his two bodyguards. I said, there ain't no way in hell I'm letting this pass, not by me. This ain't happening to me. So I beeline my Manic took off.
okay,
I beeline right at him, and the guards blocked up. I said, no, I just want to tell him something. And so they let me through. And I said, hey, you remember that? And I had that autograph with me. I said, hey, you remember that movie Cuckoo's Nest? The one that made you a big star, put a lot of money in your pocket? And his jaw drops a little and he nods. I said, yeah, I remember it too. For I was in the Cuckoo's Nest when I first saw it. And that's when his mouth went agape. And then I told him, man, let me tell you something. That movie ain't jack compared to the real deal. And I crumpled that autograph and I tossed it against his chest and it bounced harmlessly onto the floor. And I tapped him on the cheek. I said, hey, get a shave. Same thing he told me. And I beelined back to Duran's friends and they were all stunned. Their eyes are open and eyes open and word is doorknobs, mouth agape. What the hell did you tell him? I said, I told him who the hell I was. That's what I told him. There ain't no way in hell he's going to get by me. Okay. And so he just stared at me for about 10 minutes in awe. And I swear to God, it was at least like 10 minutes because they kept saying, Yanni, man, that guy's still looking at you. I said, oh, screw him. He ain't talking to me like that. Well, if it wasn't for me and people like me, there would have been no movie called Cuckoo's Nest. I put money in his pocket and he's going to be rude to me? No way in hell is that getting by me. And so anyway, he stood there for about 10 minutes. And I am friends with a producer that knows him personally. And I said, I don't know how long that lasted, but I guarantee you what, he remembered that night. He said, no, Yanni, I know Nicholson personally, and he's actually a very sensitive guy. He remembered it more from the night, I guarantee you that. So that was my little encounter with Jack Nicholson, because it just pissed me off. And, those other people in there that have suffered way worse than I can imagine. I was only in there for 2 years, okay, basically. There's people in there 10 years, the rest of their life, taking more heinous drugs than I was taking. And this guy's going to knock one of the survivors? No. That ain't happened on my watch, buddy. If I got anything to say.
You threw the autograph back at him for your friend. That's what I'm like.
I told my friend I had his autograph for a minute. It just pissed me off what he did, and it just pissed me off that that whole thing. And again, it's funny how the mind works, how that all just rushes to you. And I seen, there was one girl, a black lady in there, and she was so drugged out of it one night. She took her, fetus stuff, and wiped it against the wall. And then, yeah, it was, those things go on in there. I mean, it's every day is something new. And God bless her, God knows what was going through her mind.
Right.
What the hell's going on? She went to the bathroom and did that and wiped it all against the wall. We all seen it and all smelled it. So those things happen in there, and those people are suffering. And then this son of a gun's gonna get cocky with me? No, I survived it, but those people are an inspiration to me, because God could have let me suffer a lot more.
Right. If you were
and those people are stronger than me, because they're able to deal with it. See, and they're in there and they're dealing with that, and they're getting those drugs fed. Those drugs, I'm gonna tell you right now, 10 billion side effects. That's if you're just taking 2 drugs with each only 10 side effects. Some of those drugs have 25 or 30 side effects, and they're taking more than one. That Denny kid, the operator, he was taking 2 or 3 drugs.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying, sir. Like when that hit me, all of a sudden, all that, man, this guy needs some humility. He needs a damn shot of not Thorazine or Haldol. He needs a shot of humility, and I'm going to deliver to his ass. And that's what propagated it.
Well, you definitely did. If you were to now bump into him now, years, 20 plus years later, what would
more like 40?
40, yeah, 40 years later, if you were to have a bump with him again, how would it be now? Would it be different? You tell me.
Well, 45 years later. So, sometimes you make mistakes. I mean, he may not have meant anything by it. You also got to be able to forgive. And he may not have meant anything by it. Maybe, that's just his way of, being whatever. And Jack being Jack, so to speak. Okay. And I would, if I had the good fortune of meeting him, I'd tell him, you probably don't remember me, but I sure remember you. And I'd bring it up to him. And just to see what his reaction would be. He probably don't remember it now. It's 45 years later. I mean, the life he's lived, what a great life he's lived, So, he probably won't remember me, but I'd bring it up to him. I said, because that was a big moment for me, not because he was a celebrity, but just as a way of saying, remember where you came from, and those people still suffering there.
Right.
And you feel like, you want to be able to pull them up, to let others know that, hey, this goes on in this world. And these people suffer a lot. And that's why I'm a big advocate of national, health program. And I was a computer programmer for the state of California. I worked for the Department of Corrections when the 3 strikes law came out.
Wow.
And that was a heinous law, because there was a lot of people in there in prison, 25 to life. The judge had no recourse. And all they needed was mental health assistance. But they committed a felony. They stole candy out of a store. That's a felony. And 3 strikes, you're out, and they're in prison for a lot higher cost than it would be to be in a mental health facility getting proper help. So when I wrote that program, and I was looking at all the convicts from Charles Manson on down, because we had to rewrite the system because the system couldn't handle the 3 strikes law. again, I said, oh my God, because I'd see these cases come up because we're running different kind of tests to test the new OBIS, offender-based information system. And I seen these people's cases come up, and sometimes I just broke down and cried at my desk because I knew what was going on. I knew what was happening. It's such a heinous law because California switched their budget from mental health to prisons to build more prisons. They appropriated the money from health to prisons. And it's just sad because a lot of those people in there did not deserve to be in there. And they're in there 25 to life mandatory. So it was a heinous law. It was a very, very vicious law. And I just broke down some days. I said, oh my God. And see, again, I've been very fortunate. That could have happened to me.
Right. Now being in 2025, I mean, you've been able to see some things change, especially with laws such as, the 3-strike laws. Where would you like to see, and I'm just going to speak for, say, in California, what more do you think could be done, especially when it comes to mental health? Just across the board. Are we doing enough? Are there enough resources?
Well, there's never enough. I mean, you got to remember, mental health is in the mind. Only 20% of the mind is known, and that's being gracious. So let's make that analogy to a 1,500 square foot home. If you only know 20% of it, you know 300 square feet. The other 1,200 square feet, you're going into a dark room wearing blindfolds, trying to find a light switch. Good luck. And you're going to let this person feed you some drugs to try to find that light switch? See, then that's the problem with mental health. They don't really know how to cure it. They're getting better, but only 20% of the mind is known if you're being gracious. You're a blind man going into a dark room trying to find a light switch for another 1,200 feet.
Yeah.
So, one thing I think should be done, and I've seen this on the campus, the high school I work at, because I live in Arizona, they had a bulletin board on the campus, and they had questions on it. Why is it hard to ask for mental health support? And student put stickers on it. Can't afford therapy. I'm too shy. People won't believe me. My parents don't believe in depression. Not confident in support systems. The outcome is scary. I can do it on my own. It's a waste of money. It's too late for help. See, all those are stigmas. All righty. The first thing you got to do is destroy the stigmas for years. And my brothers meant well. They told me, hey, don't talk about this. Hide it. Don't talk about it. And for years, I didn't. No. See, wrong answer. Like, God bless the people that overcome physical illnesses. Like my brother overcame prostate cancer. Okay, and the cancer returned and he put it back in remission. And God bless them. And, society looks at them as heroes. They look at us as villains. We didn't commit any damn crime. We contracted an illness. So see, society places these stigmas and these negativities, which compounds the problem of mental illness, of especially depression. How can you get out when people are crushing you to put you down? Why do you think some of those times Mike Tyson blurted out? He's a manic depressant. He's a classic manic depressant. Why do you think some of those times he just blurted out? He's getting attacked, man. Okay? It's that simple. All right? There's no mystery behind it. Okay? It's nothing like, let's go through some mental gymnastics. He's getting an attack. All right? So he's going to blurt out. So one of the things I suggest that needs to be done more is crush these stigmas. No, praise those people. They're heroes. They're heroines. You got through that. You went in hell in a gasoline suit and come out unburnt. God bless you. But nah, let's crush him. Oh, you're mentally ill, Oh, he's crazy, all that stuff. I said, no, I'm saying I got the papers to prove it. I'm not crazy. I'm saying I got the papers to prove it. You got papers to prove your sanity?
Right.
See, fire it back. Jimmy Pearsall used that line when he was a commentator. They called him crazy. No, I'm saying I got the paper to prove it, because they made a movie on him, Fear Strikes Out, because he was mentally ill, baseball player during the 50s and 60s, and he was hospitalized. So see, to me, one of the big things is the negativity by society. They look down upon it.
Mm.
But it should be brought out, because we all can pull each other up. But if each of us are on an island being suppressed and crushing down, there's no unity. There's no victory through unity like there is on other illnesses, more physical illnesses. And God bless them. And I'm glad that, they got cured, and I'm glad my brother's healthy right now and stuff like that. Okay. My other brother died of cancer. He didn't smoke for 35 years, and all of a sudden he got lung cancer.
Wow.
Okay. So, yeah. So, but that's one of the big things they got to do is crush these stigmas. All righty. And then let people express their way to get out of their lows. All righty. For me, exercise, do something, do prayer, go for a walk, listen to music. Tina Turner did not Byzantine chants, but the Buddhist chants.
Right.
Because, she was getting attacked. All the hell she went through in that abusive relationship. Yeah, she was fighting through the manic depression, remembering those horrible times she was getting beat and abused. And that prayer, those chants helped her. So these things aren't stressed enough. They got all these drugs and they're all talking this and that and these theories. But some of the things are very simple. A lot of the things resources that God put out there for us to use are very simple. I mean, I found 6 of them. And I'm no doctor, I'm no licensed physician by a million years, but if I found a way, others can find their way. And that's what it's about. But you have to encourage them. You can't suppress them. That's why those kids put all those stigmas on that bulletin board. And I read them and I wrote them down because I knew what they were. I knew what they were going through. And there's a lot of, I've seen kids on the campus I teach, they committed suicide. Wow. We're talking teenagers here, and no help. And then you shouldn't feel ashamed to admit that you have a mental illness. People ain't ashamed to admit they got a cold. That's an illness too. But why does society praise one and demean the other? And that's what really irritates me as much as Jack Nicholson did. No, that person's my hero. That Denny, that kid, God bless me, I don't know if he's alive or not, but to go through all that hell and still be able to wake up in the morning, 10 years, now you're my hero, buddy, and you take those drugs. My buddy, the drug dealer, drug taker, I was on light drugs compared to Denny. I was on candy compared to Denny. Thorazine, Haldol, together. I asked one of the workers in there, because I thought he might have been BSing me. I said, "Are you really on Thorazine, Haldol?" They're not supposed to tell you.
Right.
But they just nodded and said, "Yeah, but I didn't tell you that." Saving their own ass, but telling me the truth.
Sure.
Trying to help me, to saying, "Hey, you're lucky, dude. You're only on something that drives you nuts."
Wow.
Try living what he's got to go through every day, 4 times a day. It's not like you're skipping a meal here, pal. You're taking those drugs. You're taking them, and you're taking them 4 times a day. And if you don't, oh boy, those hillbilly redneck security guards, just like this asshole right now is going to deport people, that bulldog-looking SOB. I'm going to whoop your ass. Yeah, why don't you whoop my ass when I'm healthy? You'll know and look like you've been in a fight then. But no, you got me now when I'm down. Okay, so that's when I'm saying that when you look at society, even to this day, how do they look at mental health? Oh, it's very pristine. You got all these people with a bunch of initials on the end of their name. Well, God bless them. That's all good too. But what about the sufferers? That's why I'm very thankful to you, very grateful to you and prayerful towards you. They're giving me an opportunity to express this. People like me and others who suffered way worse than me. What about our voices? What about us? Why can't we have our story told and praised? Why do I want to be shoved underneath the carpet like my mother was? Like I allowed myself to be for a lot of years. I dated a girl. She became a doctor at UCLA, a medical center, a psychologist. She said, Yanni, I never knew that you had mental illness. You never told me anything. I said, yeah, I know, but back in them times when I knew you and stuff, and we hung out and we danced and everything, it was, you weren't supposed to talk about it. So all those years, I stay hidden. Then I said, you know what? F that. Hell no. And so I come out with my story, and others out there, they've got even more horrific stories. Me, I was fortunate enough to develop a method that works. I was fortunate enough to be able to keep the will to fight. See, some people just give up the fight. Man, I'm tired. Screw it, I quit. I'll go back to the institution. I seen like revolving door, and that's why that girl told me. If you think it's hard this time, come back. And that's what doctors told me. You think it's hard the first time, go a second time. And that scared me. It gives me goosebumps to this day. I don't want to go back there. Because, see, it's that much harder to get out of there. Because you give up your spirit. You've lost your innate, your internal Holy Trinity. It's been broken. That's why I always start with those 3 first rules that center around faith and prayer. Because you got to build that fortress, because that fortress is going to get attacked. Bet that. If you got one bet to make, bet that you're going to get attacked. Just like the alcoholic gets attacked every day. He sees a bottle. I bet he can see a Coke bottle and think it's a whiskey bottle.
Mm.
So he's got to have his weapons, just like the manic depressant has to have their weapons. That's why Mike Tyson, you see him in a lot of these shows, and he's got his marijuana. He's got his stuff he deals with to keep his equilibrium, to keep his balance, and it works for him. Because he was a loose cannon, the poor guy. I mean, he went through all that hell at a young age, and he had no guide. And once Customato died, here he was, this famous guy, this great athlete, all this money, and he had no help. He was 20 years old. A lot of people knock him. I have at my times too. But when you look back at it and you put yourself in there, he's in a Shark Tank. People were all using him, man.
Right.
And he's got manic depression. At least in my opinion. I mean, he's a classic manic depressant. So he's going to go off. He's going to go nuts. And same thing with me. Same thing with others. They're gonna go off. And you just have to have your fortress built to be able to defend the attacks. And that's really what it's all about. But to answer your question, the first thing they got to do is get rid of these stigmas. Just like that little, in the rotunda out there, they put that sign up there about, dealing with manic depression. All the kids put their little stigmas on there why they don't seek help.
Right.
And all those things, we read through those things, are all negative. That's all negativity. I didn't see one positive post on that bulletin board. Not one. That tells you what goes on in mental health and manic depression. There's a reason no one put anything positive on there, because no positivity exists. They don't say, oh my God, you defeated manic depression. God bless you. How'd you do it? Will you help me? You don't hear that. You don't see that. That's why I praise you for letting me be on your show. Because that's what people have to do. They have to get out of the, just like the LGBTQ got out of the closet.
Right.
Same thing here. These people need to come out and say, hey, screw society. Screw this stuff that's saying, no, we should hide this. F you. No, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to praise those who survive. I'm going to feel compassion for those who cannot. Because you don't want to walk in their shoes, believe me, especially when it's drug time and you get in that line and they give you that little paper cup with 1 to 3 pills in it and that little sip of water to wash it down with. And then you walk away in about 20 minutes, you're going to go nuts. Guaranteed. They call it the nut house for a reason.
That's why, Ioannis, I'm able to say your story is from being a victim to turning into a victor. Because you've turned into a victory of telling your story. And more importantly, standing on the mountaintop saying, this is me, this is who I am, and this is my story, which makes you being transparent. And nobody can take that story from you, but they can definitely live and learn from your story. So my question always, I always pose this to everybody who comes on the show. What is the legacy that Ioannis wants to be able to ensure that he's able to say that he did? What's Ioannis's legacy? What would be your legacy?
Well, I don't know if I have a legacy, but that's very gracious of you to say that. The reason why I'm coming out with this stuff is that I want to help others. You know, Maslow had his hierarchy, and the 5th one is the highest one where you're helping others. And if I can help one person every time I talk about this, if I can reach out and help one person, okay, I've done my job. I've done my job, and that's really what I want to get out of this, is be able to help others. Because I've seen my own mother suffer from this. And, you know, I've seen myself suffer. I've seen the pain I caused my brothers because I was so hard on my oldest brother because he had me put in there. You know, all the grief I caused him. Of course, they prepped him for it, but still, it's you know, when you're in that situation, you start blaming everybody but you. And so that's what if it's a legacy or whatever you want to call it, if I can help others in any way, small, big, whatever. And that's why I developed these 6 points. And that's when I want to reach out. I want to build a website. I want to go out and reach more people, get on more shows, bring out this awareness, bring out ways you can attack this, ways you can defeat it without having to, and some people need the drugs or talk to a psychologist. Some don't. So if I could help others, then I feel that I did my job, that, you know, I was blessed with this illness. God graced me with this for a reason. And I was able to, you know, deal with it, live with it, function with it fine. I mean, I'm fine. And I know how to attack it when it attacks me. But if I could take that last step in Maslow's hierarchy and help others, then, you know, I can complete, you know, there's a saying, what you are is God's gift to you. What you become is your gift to him. So if I could live that, then that's my legacy through this ordeal that he blessed me with. Because it's really a blessing to be able to be afflicted with this and still live and still be healthy and get through it, find a way to maintain, and then go out and help others. That's the spiritual apex of getting through this, is being able to help others.
Well said. Well said. We're going to put all your information in our story notes. So if you want to reach out to him, you guys will be able to, his direct email will be there. I know you have the website up. I know you sent me the website about your scripts. But, Giannis is definitely available. He's open to talk. Of course, before I get to wrap up, Giannis, I always like to try to end up on a high note, and it's called rapid fire. I know many of the questions I've asked you today, we've already been able to have a conversation about, but these are rapid questions. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. But before I do those rapid questions, I almost forgot. I like to wrap up my show. I learned from the Diary of a CEO is if you if you would be able to leave a question for our next guest. And whatever question that may be, you could pose that question and they'll ask it because my next guest will then answer that question. They'll have one. It's always like the way that we want to, of course, to keep the gift of conversation going. So if you had one question that you could give to another guest, what would it be?
Who was one person that inspired you that's not famous? And it's not your parents. A person outside your parents or outside celebrity, one person who inspired you.
That's going to be answered in our next episode that we'll have. But before we go, Ioannis, here comes 5 rapid questions. You can answer them any way, how you want. And I promise you there are no wrong answers. First question is this. Favorite food?
Too many to list.
Favorite exercise?
Walking.
All right. Favorite car? Dream car.
I just bought a new car, so it's got to be my Subaru Forester, the base model.
Subaru Forester. Okay. Love or fear?
Love.
And last, certainly, of peace or purpose?
Peace.
Those are his 5 responses. Ioannis, I thank you so much for being on the show. Again, we're going to keep all his information will be in our show notes. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being patient again through this time. You guys may not be aware. We've been trying to do this since last December. Like, we were going to do this starting in January. We had the fires. And I have to admit, Ioannis, out of all of our guests, you have been the one that's been the most persistent. So I thank you. I personally, Mr. Jean, appreciate you. I acknowledge you, and I commend you for telling your story.
Thank you for allowing me to be on your show. And you're really a very impressive young man. And I hope we can stay in touch. Someday I'd love to meet you, man. You're great. I really appreciate what you've done for me. I appreciate it very much.
I want to thank you guys again for tuning in. Every week I'm actually trying to get better, to present you guys something that's from the heart, more importantly, that you can relate to. Now, Gary Vee says it best, so I'm going to quote him. Sharing these thoughts is like oxygen to me. So if they resonate with you, if you feel that this can benefit somebody, subscribe, share, more importantly, like all my platforms, Instagram, Facebook, theliveexperienceonline.com. And I look forward to speaking and sharing with you guys real soon. Be well.